Chapter 5 Earth, Moon, Sun. As I was busy doing my absolute best to research and educate myself on all that I could locate pertaining to the Kundalini awakening, pineal gland, and the plethora of symbols that represent it, which I hoped would then provide an explanation as to how these newfound and drastic changes were and even continue occurring within my life, I kept finding myself having a reoccurring dream, one that returned to me regularly either in my dreams or in repetitive random thoughts or daydreams. Dreams that, like many of the others before it, I ultimately stumbled upon while awake. In my dreams, I am laying on the ground looking upward at a time-lapse of the perfectly timed movements of the sun, moon, and stars behind them, all moving along their annual paths that follow a trajectory that, in my opinion, exceeds one's expectations of precision and predictability. It were as if I was watching the last 100 years pass before my eyes, each day witnessing the sun move across the sky in the same manner, just a few degrees more with each passing. Each night, I would observe the shadow on the moon make its way across the face of our nighttime luminary as it made its journey, causing it to provide the just as predictable and useful lunar cycle. The dream would continue until abruptly stopping, regularly waking me from my sleep, and for some particular reason at the precise moment of a total solar eclipse. Although seeing these motions have been a daily part of life, I must say, the precision had just never dawned on me before. It was due to dreaming this that I, for the first time, fully noticed and was able to genuinely appreciate their closely connected relationships to one another from our earthly perspective. I seriously started to ponder on how this much perfection could even be possible. I then decided to proceed to research this myself. That somehow out of nowhere a veil was lifted, and I began discovering clues and signs about them everywhere. To my surprise, I've discovered an abundance of very valid arguments pertaining to not just the sun and the moon, but even the shape of our planet. Why would they hide this? More importantly, how is it even possible applying the known laws of physics? They would have obviously already figured something like this out a long time ago, was my and would be anyone's first response to such claims. I know I was obviously shocked and considerably confused when first randomly discovering the age-old belief that the Earth, in fact, does not move, and is instead a flat, circular, non-spherical, and stationary, meaning non-rotating, inert plane of existence. But even more interestingly coincidental, that the luminaries overhead are to be utilized, in fact, as a clock according to the Bible. Genesis chapter 1 verse 14 says, "And God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven, to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs to show when special meetings begin, and for seasons, and for days and years." After a moment's thought, and considering all that I've recently experienced, I first asked myself, does it not make you at least a bit curious on how or why this may be assumed before laughing it off? I then proceeded to ask myself if the currently provided model really made any more sense. I decided I had to research the topic deeper, compile, then compare the information provided for myself before simply waving anything off or coming to any form of final conclusions. I have been, since that moment, unfortunately met with a rather confusing reaction of hostility or laughter from anyone whom I attempt to discuss my concerns or observations with. Flat earther, globe-tard. I almost lose hope in what we call modern society, when rather than learning and growing together, I see countless grown adults instinctively argue and ridicule, even name-call over so many innumerable topics. They habitually do so even when they don't take an opportunity to fully understand the concepts of the other's argument. More times than not, I find that most that choose to fight completely lacking the ability to provide an explanation to validate why exactly it is that they believe what they do. Unfortunately, anymore, it seems as though people only want to argue simply for the sake of arguing. Countless observations have been carried out to test if earthly motion can, in fact, be detected through the ether. Most famously known is the Michelson-Morley interferometry experiment. In 1887, physicist Albert Abraham Michelson collaborated with colleague Edward Williams Morley of Western Reserve University, now part of Case Western Reserve University, in the Michelson-Morley experiment. Their experiment searched for the expected motion of the Earth relative to the ether. The hypothetical medium in which light was supposed to travel resulted in a null result. Surprised, Michelson repeated the experiment with greater and greater precision over the next years, but continued to find no ability to measure the ether. The Michelson-Morley results were immensely influential in the physics community, leading Hendrik Lorentz to devise his now famous Lorentz contraction equation as a means of explaining the null result. There has been some historical controversy over whether Albert Einstein was aware of the Michelson-Morley result when he developed his theory of special relativity, which pronounced the ether to be superfluous. In a later interview, Einstein said of the Michelson-Morley experiment, "I was not conscious it had influenced me directly. I guess I just took it for granted that it was true." Regardless of Einstein's specific knowledge, the experiment is today considered the canonical experiment in regards to showing the lack of a detectable ether. The precision of their equipment allowed Michelson and Morley to be the first to get precise values for the fine structure in the atomic spectral lines, for which in 1916 Arnold Sommerfeld gave a theoretical explanation introducing the fine structure constant. However, this null result of motion being detected can lead to two different interpretations, depending on which speed of light we think was measured by the experiment. The speed of light in space, or the speed of light inside the Earth's atmosphere. If we assume that the experiment measured the speed of light in space, then the null result of the experiment implies that the Earth is not moving through space, as only observers at rest with respect to an optical medium should measure an isotropic speed of light. Provided that the Earth is in fact moving through space, the null result of the experiment then implies that the speed of light is independent of the motion of the observer, as apparently even observers in motion with respect to the optical medium measure an isotropic speed of light. In this instance, the Michelson-Morley experiment does seem to imply that the Earth is not moving through space. The ground beneath our feet and the skies over our heads have been a major topic of interest for all ages. As beautiful as it is vast, one cannot help but gaze and ponder at how such a masterpiece so grand could ever have possibly come into fruition. According to NASA, Earth measures in just under 25,000 miles in circumference, with a diameter just under 8,000 miles across. It settles in orbit as planetary body number 3, just over 94.5 million miles away from the Sun in a habitable zone nicknamed the Goldilocks Zone, a location not too hot, not too cold, but just right for the formation of liquid water. The Earth then rotates upon a fixed axis at a speed roughly 1,000 miles per hour in order to provide us a 24-hour day. Percentages of light and dark vary upon the time of year. We then make a complete orbit around our Sun within 365.256 days at a speed that has been approximated to be roughly 67,000 miles per hour, during which time we experience 4 seasons, each broken into a roughly 3-month segment of a 12-month year.